Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode. This is we're going to discuss about generative AI, and World Talent Economy Forums. We are collaborating with the Prime Minister Office of Bangladesh. So recently we attend and organize one of the largest conference in Bangladesh. Uh, this is very big collaborations with this Commonwealth foundations. So people from around the world, 300 delegates come and join in this forum, and our objective, we want to develop and uplift the communities with modern science, engineering, and technology. AI is a very important factor for around the world. So what we call generative AIs, I think Mr. David Smith is a world famous speaker, and he can explain how generative AI can work. uh, Mr. David Smith. Mr. David, can you unmute yourself?
That was a great introduction, Sharif. I have to remember it now. Thank you so much for letting me do this. Generative AI is, I said a technology, but it really is a collection of technologies that exploit many of the leading edge things we're doing in artificial intelligence and uh, speech recognition, vision recognition, image recognition, and really pushing the boundary of some of our machine learning, natural language processing, and AI tools to really dramatically accelerate what can be done and how it's going to have an impact. Yeah, so generative AI is capable of generating text, images, other media, and response to things you can do with it. And it's a really powerful tool as you begin to look at how I can use it, how it can be applied, and um, the different places I can begin to use it. So let me just kind of think about some of it. Me actually maybe see if I can do this. Uh, it's a tool though that is really transformational. Uh, so as we begin to look at it, it really began back in the early 2020s as the base of the generative AI, and it began to use deep neural networks and natural language inputs as prompts, and so you begin to say things which were large language models, LLMs, which you've heard us talk about before, are places where you can inform, you can educate, you can bring it, and we've seen them in places like Chatbox, Bing, Brad, uh, and some of the text to images ones such as Stable Diffusion and Midjourney and DALL-E. All of these have been ones which have really pushed it. And now we see large companies beginning to come into play and beginning to use parts of it really well. And this is really the pace is there because if I go back and look at the past history of artificial intelligence, which generative AI is one of the newer approaches in AI. It began back at Dartmouth University in 1956, and that's where the discipline really uh, came out of. But the basic premises of the artificial intelligence actually go back to the times of the Greeks and how it can be used to enhance what we're doing. And the things with, for example, the hero of Alexander Ottomans were a form of generative AI back then. You know, it didn't use technology, but that was the philosophy of the time, which is kind of where we are with generative AI today. And a generative AI system today is constructed by applying uh, really unsupervised or self supervised machine learning. to a data set and beginning to use that and go. And it can be in areas such as text, code, images, music, video, science of all different types, planning, robotics, and the list just really goes on. And uh, I can give you some personal examples that I think are very applicable to here. Let me give you the first one. Uh, I am not a guy who writes poetry, but I wanted to write a poem. And I went into Chat GPT. I outlined what Chat GPT calls prompts, the major points I wanted in my poem. And it wrote me a wonderful poem. I went in and massaged it and delivered it, and everyone who saw it was blown away with the poem. I was at an IC Square 10 Can Do fellow meeting on Tuesday here in Austin, Texas. We actually used Chat GPT and asked a couple of questions about Austin, Texas. We asked, what are the major issues facing the future of Austin? We asked, what are the key care abouts that we have in Austin? What are the stakeholders and constituencies that have to be impacted by this? What are the key elements of an initial strategy to address the things above? And we had Chat GPT in a matter of less than a minute generate us a multiple page report that listed all of those elements and all of the things that needed to be done to help us transform Austin into Austin's future, and and how that can go. Uh, Let me see if I can do this. Um, so let me try something. And I'm going to keep talking, but I'm going to try to do this as I go forward. Um, and we can see how it can be used. Let me try one other thing here real quick. The other things as I talk about this and get the other thing going is there is now a lot of other tools being developed for generative AI. Um, One of the tools that is very interesting to me is that there's now tools that will take the work out of some of the hard parts of it. And one of the hard parts of it is doing things like generating the prompts. And there's a science to generating the prompts almost uh, that are in there. Um, and you have to work those to get out. There's an old saying, garbage in, garbage out. And that is so much true in so many different things that you have to carefully work those issues um, and make sure they can apply and be used in a way that gives you quality output. Um, Part of it is that people begin to look at it as a black box and black box algorithms. And yes, there's some truth to that, but the the large language systems that go in there is what informs it, and some of them have bias, and you have to understand the bias. If it's missing things, you can update with your own uh, type of LLMs to update it even more. Uh, and those can help you begin to use different things to be successful as you begin to use it. Um, Let me kind of see this as we go. and it can begin to generate a considerable knowledge as you get out from it, and how you can begin to put in the challenges you have, what you want the uh, and really begin to use it in a way that can be applied in a way that makes so much sense. And I think we'll see that. Um, try it again. So I was trying to pull up a chat GPT on Bangladesh, and let me see how I can do that. Let me come back to this. So Sharif, I'm going to try to share my screen. And let me see. Sharif, can you see the screen now yet? Sharif, there we go. So this is a chat GPT that I just did. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Um, so here's the question. I just entered into chat GPT the name Bangladesh Future Needs. And this is what it just generated back for me, is that some of the future needs include economic diversification, infrastructure, education and skill development, healthcare, environmental sustainability, good governance, rural development, digital transformation, and you can see the other ones here. Uh, and you can take those and begin to develop them further, such as I can come in here and begin to take that as the first issue. I can go in here and say, uh, who needs to be involved, and for and just to give you an idea, let me go ahead and submit that. And it is generating it right now. And let's see where we go with it and what comes back. So here's some of the output. Let's break down your questions one by one. So here is Bangladesh's future needs and putting it into context. Who needs to be involved? The government, private sector, the civil societies, international, academia, local, youth and women. What are the care abouts? And healthcare includes access to healthcare services, child health division, environmental, in education. And here's a set of next steps that the generative AI produced uh, on its own. And you can see how simple a generative AI approach can be to be helpful. Now, are those perfect? No, we need to bring the human side to it. We need to bring the human capability to take that, give us our local knowledge. You've heard me talk many times in the past about group intelligence. We need to bring group intelligence to taking what generative AI can give us. But for me to enter 4 questions and for it to go and from its own research, from its own knowledge base, pull that type of answers, to me is quite impressive on what it can be. And before the call, Sharif and I were talking about Bangladesh and some of the things that could be done. And Sharif, you can see how very quickly this tool could be used to have a group of us folks who are have more wisdom because of our experience and our age and stuff to be working with people within Bangladesh using tools like this to dramatically accelerate what can be done in Bangladesh and to dramatically accelerate the impacts that can be held there. So, Sharif, I hope that example was useful as part of the context of what generative AI is. And I can talk some more about it. But just with that really quick demo, based on your questions before this started, I think you can see how for Bangladesh and particularly for developing nations, this is a start of a tool that can be transformational. Uh, any thoughts on that right now while I catch up my breath? Um, you're muted. Sharif, you're muted. There you go.
My questions to you that how generative AI can be helpful for Bangladesh and emerging economy. So, what do you think? We are losing job, we are losing our business, or what will happen?
Uh, you you had great questions there. Uh, let me just try to use it. Let me let generative AI provide you part of the answer to that. And I think this is one of the places where you can begin to see the impact, just like you were talking about. Uh, and I'm going to share my screen again and see if this helps you. So, Sharif, I'm back into Chat GPT here. And if you look at Chat GPT's answer here, let me blow this up a little bit larger again. So here's your question. Job loss in Bangladesh can result from various factors, economic downturns, industry, technology. So here's some of generative AI solutions for Bangladesh. Diversify the economy, skills development and training, entrepreneur support. Three, uh, those are things I talk about almost every day on your program. Is how to do these things. Labor market information, promote remote work, invest in education, implement better labor market policy, infrastructure, export, direct foreign investment, public-private partnerships, green jobs, global trade. Uh, so this is just in answer to your question, uh, a very simple uh, generative AI answer to your question. And I think just using that as an example, Sheree, partly answers your question, but also by using generative AI can write computer code. Generative AI can help write regulations and do other things like that. And while I'd love to talk about, I think just the example of answering those now 5 questions using Chat GPT, you can see some of the impact there and how it can be used as a very good tool. Now, I want to make it very clear here. The answers from generative AI tools like ChatGPT that we just used, uh, are not always accurate. There's bias in it. It will pick up errors and repeat errors. But as a starting point, you can see how useful it was for Bangladesh. I mean, it identified some of the challenges of Bangladesh. It identified some of the people who need to be involved. It put together actually the list of people as stakeholders that went beyond what I would have chosen not being in Bangladesh. And I think did a good job there. What's the key care abouts? What are the intangibles that need to be addressed? And how do you solve the problems with jobs? And if you think about it, it generated all those answers in less than a couple of minutes using large language model systems that are pretty applicable there. Now, the more information that the developing nations can put in the models about themselves, the better the answers are going to be. But once again, this is only a start. Humans have to go in and take it and use it, modify, and make sure it's correct. So I hope that helped answer your question. And Donald, great having you on the program. And you're muted, Donald.
Sorry I couldn't get here earlier, but here I am. Hi.
So Donald, what I did is I actually let me show you because I think it should be something that is useful for you. I went into Chat GPT and actually asked Chat GPT questions like, what are Bangladesh futures needs? And it came up with actually a pretty good list. Uh, and then I did one where we talked about that, who needs to be involved, what are the care abouts, what are the next steps, and then what are the solutions to Bangladesh losing jobs. And here's an answer from ChatGPT on what are some of the solutions for Bangladesh losing jobs. So you can see how we defined what generative AI is before and talked through it and the applicability, and actually gave an online example of it being used for the problems which Sharif is talking about. So that brings you up to kind of speed of where we are now. And I look forward to you talking some.
Well, that was a terrific idea, a great way to get started on that.
Yes,
ChatGPT is
just
fun.
just 30 seconds, Mr. David Smith. You take a lead.
Okay. Okay. So go ahead, Donald.
Yeah, ChatGPT is fun. There's an interesting article that I think you brought up its biggest problem, though, which is that you have no idea whatsoever if what it comes up with is correct or accurate.
That's right.
Because if it needs facts, it's a problem with it right now. If it needs facts and they haven't figured out how to, I'll get to that in a second. It just makes them up. And there was an article done in the last couple months, I think even last month in Nature, where a team of people decided what they try and do is use ChatGPT to write a scientific paper to see if they could, see if it was easier to write scientific papers using ChatGPT than it was just doing it the old way. And it turned out it was pretty near even. I think it was maybe a little more difficult with ChatGPT, and the main problem is that they had to go and fact check everything, because the facts that it put into the scientific paper, it just makes them up. And so they call that hallucination is the technical term for that. They and when you think about it, ask yourself, you read something on the internet and it's a fact of some sort, like, well, the best way to solve the problem in Bangladesh is such and such and such and such, or whatever. I mean, I guess that's pretty obviously an opinion, but but when you read a fact, how do you decide whether that fact is a real fact or not? I mean, if you can believe that fact, you can believe what you read. It's not that easy. Like the you have to look at the reputation of where you heard the fact is useful, but it's certainly not all there is. I mean, even Nature and Science and places like that publish papers that are inaccurate, and the inaccuracies aren't discovered for years. And you know, it's much less common than just reading a somebody's Facebook post or something like that, which you have little idea, little reason to believe at all. But the knowledge that the quote, knowledge that the generative AI has is basically they just read the internet and books and everything else like that, and there's no if it reads stuff that's wrong, it doesn't have it would have to be able to make the same kind of decisions that we make to be able to decide if something's wrong. So, what is the reputation of it? Do multiple places have the same thing? If it's research, how is the research approached? Look at the data set. Is the data set adequate? And on and on and on. And even so, we still, mistakes creep through. So one of the things that seems to me, I wish that generative AI could do is basically fact check, because there's so much misinformation and disinformation that goes around these days. It seems to me it'd be wonderful to have AI be able to do that, to fact check. But sadly, that's one of the things it's the worst at yet. And I've said this every time we talk about generative AI, is that it's missing the ability to make guesses. And so like when we're trying to solve the problem, is we see something, we see, okay, this is a statement of fact. And then we ask ourselves, well, I'm guessing that this statement is accurate or inaccurate. You guess one way or the other. And I guess that if it's accurate, then I'll be able to find the same information in 10 different places. But these are all rule based. These are things we come up with in our mind. It's called abductive reasoning. And so far, generative AI, AI can't do that, and we don't really know how to get it to do that, or it would. We haven't figured that out yet, but or who knows if we will. But then back to what you're saying. But on the other hand, they did another study where they gave a group of experts essays. I think these were in the humanities, essays written by generative AI and essays written by regular people, by humans, and they asked the experts to guess which were which, and they did very poorly. The experts really could not tell which ones were done by humans and which ones were done by generative AI. So that's an incredible, that's a challenge in itself. But one of the ways that I look at that is that kind of an opportunity in that is that if people are doing stuff that's so average and so blah that you can't tell the difference between generative AI. When you see stuff that's written by it, it's cool in a way, but it's kind of blah. It's like pop music almost, it's and I'm sure that if you had actual like Nabokov or somebody else like that writing, you'd be able to tell that it wasn't generative AI. But um, for the rest of us, it's pretty tough to beat them. But anyway, where I think that some of the opportunities with it, where people have really been doing well and making money out of this, is doing things like using generative AI to come up with better dating apps, and using generative AI to do just like a piece, like some. In fact, my wife was applying to a new job a few months ago, and she's writing her cover letter, and what a pain in the neck that is. And I said, use Chat GTP. Damned if
And
it
it,
didn't write her a perfect cover letter that got her the job. So I mean, uh, I think it's interesting, uh, and there's kind of two sides to it. So that's all I'm going to say right now.
well, Donald, I loved how you started this and with how do you verify it and how do you do the things. So again, I'm going to show something that I think is a really interesting answer if I can get it up. So I guess with Sharif, I cannot share my screen right now. Let me see.
Oh,
Yeah, look
rats.
what I did, and I'll just read it. I actually went into Chat GPT and I asked the question, how can I fact check Chat GPT? So, and the first thing it is, it brought up get citation button on it, but it says cross reference with reliable sources, check multiple, look for citation or references, uh, get Chat GPT to get you all the citations. And when I use Chat GPT for something that's critical, I do that. It says use fact checking websites such as Fast Check, Political Fact, or others. Talk with experts, check dates and context. Be skeptical of unverified claims, critical thinking, fact checking tools, report inaccuracy, recognize limitations. Uh, a large part of ChatGPT's LLM is based on pre-2022 data. Understand AI capabilities and context models, how you ask the question models matters. I can tell you with what I talked about earlier at the IC Squared 10 Can Do Fellow meeting we had in Austin on Tuesday, and as we were using actually ChatGPT to help stir discussion on the future of Austin. Uh, it was a powerful tool, not perfect. Our knowledge supplemented it, but it was a great tool for dialogue. It was a great tool to use as an outline. And see, just even asking the question that you asked when you started before, how can you check it? How can you verify it? And letting it begin to give you part of the answer, I think shows how wonderful of a tool it can be to use and look for the future. Uh, and I see that we have Salima joining us right now. And I see Sharif's coming back. So let's get him up. Uh, and let's see. I can tell Sharif's having an internet problem again, too. But Donald, you can see to what your point is, how generative AI is still not perfect. It's a long ways from it, but it's a useful tool. Just asking the question you posed and letting it provide us things to think about, build up on things. And the same with like your wife with her cover letter. I said earlier, and you missed it, that I use Chat GPT to help me write a poem. I do not write poetry. My mind doesn't work like a poet. But I had Chat GPT, I gave it a detailed outline. It wrote the poem, I modified the poem, and people loved it. And it made me look like I could write poetry, which I cannot. And so they were really impressed. And I didn't have the heart to tell them that Chat GPT helped me, but it was really there. Selena, if you're there, why don't you go ahead and unmute and give us your thoughts on generative AI? Are you with us? Well, she's not. Donald, let me go back to you then and try to figure out what this is. Let me message Sharif.
Yeah, you can definitely, I mean, in a way, that's kind of almost like being a sophisticated search engine when you get the idea of how do you, because if you when you get your graduate degrees and you're doing research and you're trying to write research for papers for journals and things like that, you take courses on how to double check and how to fact check things and stuff like that, and you take a course in philosophy of science and blah blah blah, so that you understand, you kind of understand what the issues are. And since ChatGTP is really basically just like a really 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 cool search engine that um, organizes things instead of just lines of uh, links to various places that you might look at, it takes the information that's in those links and then organizes in them a way that is closer to real English and or real whatever language. And it the one thing I'm saying that we've got a ways to go and it's not clear how to get there is that then you go and ask it to do the things on the list, and how is it going to, how does it have the judgment about, well, part of the judgment it isn't just like factual. In other words, it's not something that you can part of the judgment is I don't know, I'd say tacit knowledge. And of course, it can look there. There are a lot. We look at the idea of what it is as critical thinking. So what we want to be able to have ChatGTP do is critical thinking, is a way to put it, which is when you look at the list that you were just reading from ChatGTP of things that it about multiple sources, fact checking, kind of taking an attitude in the beginning that being skeptical about just taking everything at face value and things like that. These are critical, what we call critical thinking skills. And what being a good critical thinker in one topic doesn't necessarily transfer into being a good critical thinker in another topic. Sadly, there's been some research papers I've read on this, is that we wish that critical thinking was completely a higher metacognition skill, but that people can think critically very very well in one field, and then when they get into another field, we can look at people who are brilliant Nobel Prize winners in one field who then go into another field, and no one can believe how anybody that smart could say such stupid things, but they're in their own mind because they have and also the people around them, everybody tells them how smart they are because they have a Nobel Prize and blah blah blah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can transfer something from one place to another. And these are interesting challenges. And the reason I bring them up is because I'm always emphasizing how interesting it is how we as human beings work, and how much more complicated. But I can't agree with you more that I think if I was teaching writing, I would love to be able to. I think a really good way that people could teach it is to say, well, have ChatGPT write it. Okay, now let's critique it. Let's talk about it from here. Like, why is the way that James Joyce and Nabokov, what is different from, is there something about these people that are, Maya Angelou, somebody like that are really, really incredible writers? What's the difference? Like, and I think it'd be an incredible place to start off and start a discussion. And I think we could learn a lot about ourselves if we do it too, because again, with deep learning, we've only got the data that we put in there, and it may be possible that our creativity and problem-solving ability is still, it's something we've still got a long way to go to actually really be able to understand well enough to get computers to actually do what to do it better than us or as well as us.
Well, Donald, I agree with you so much there. At this fellows meeting I mentioned, a couple of us who were there have used ChatGPT quite a bit. And one of the secrets we've shared with people is when you generate the prompts, ask the questions, things, is the best way is not to do it as a sentence, but to do it as a multiple level outline. So number one, here it is. 1A, here it is. Then underneath 1A, go another layer out and ask for further clarification, and come back with number 2, do the same thing. And the better you frame the prompts, the much higher output you will get. And the other thing we know is take that same outline and have it regenerate the output several times. And it will continue to refine itself when you do that. So it gives you a quick one, and then it will refine itself and refine it more. I'll give you an example, and I have to be careful with the way I say this one. I was on a phone call, a Teams meeting a couple of months ago. And in the Teams meeting, they said, David, can you give us this? Can you write a document up and give it to us tomorrow? And I went, ooh, my calendar's really full. And they said, yeah, we need a document. We need probably about 10 to 15 pages talking about this thing. And so what I did is after I finished, I went over to ChatGPT. I put a detailed outline and I put characteristics. I said, I need 15 pages. I need it to use data that has only been generated in the last 5 years. And I gave it a set of criteria before I had it run the outline. And you know what? It generated me 15 pages of really good stuff that I went back and I totally edited it. And some stuff in there wasn't applicable. I went and added new figures and stuff it didn't have yet. And guess what? I delivered them 15 pages the next afternoon. And they went, God, this is good. It's got all you made the key points. You did this, you did that. And yes, I edited it. I probably edited 15% of it, maybe 20% of it. But boy, it did a lot of work for me. And that's one of the places where generative AI is very useful. You talked about using it as a search tool. I'm this close to replacing Siri on my phone with actually ChatGPT, and I think it will do better on a lot of my stuff with it. There's a third-party add-on that uses ChatGPT as its engine that they've structured it to work as a Siri replacement, and I get frustrated with Siri all the time, particularly since I use it with Apple CarPlay in my car. And if this works better, God, I'm all for it, because I love using the car as office time. I'm always on calls, I'm always responding to text and stuff. And if it will do a better job than what it Siri does, I will jump on it in a heartbeat. And so that is where some of the generative AI things are coming in, is they're looking at how to do it. Chat bots that are now taking over a lot of customer service is a form of generative AI. And we're seeing all these type of benefits from using chatbots. I mean, I cannot tell you, I will, when I go to customer support websites, I'll use a chat box first before I want queue up for a human. Because I have some friends who work in the tech support business and things. What's very interesting is most of the large companies are now using generative AI as part of their tech support, as part of their customer service, to help the live humans answer your question. So when you ask them the question, they're going into their own generative AI system using an enhanced LLM that the company's put together to answer your question. If I can do that without the human, it's going to be faster. And I will see the full details that an agent will not necessarily give me, because they're just going to scan the highlights and give it to me. So there's a lot of places where generative AI is in use that we don't realize it's in use today, and that we'll begin to see it used even more and more. Uh, but I cannot wait to see it grow. So Donald, that's kind of my back, and that we see generative AI everywhere, but we don't realize it's generative AI today.
Yeah, well, I get uh, by the time I hate going to calling customer service. So by the time I ever do that, it's because I want them to reverse a bill or do something else, some mistake, like complicated mistake like that requires authority. And so it's usually, may I talk to your supervisor? It's and the chatbots are just terrible at doing that. They're very
Some,
frustrating.
some are, but I've actually seen some that work like that. And I've seen
But
chatbots where I've said, can we elevate this, come back and solve the problem? So it depends on how the organization has implemented the chat box.
well, have
So
you used Bing much? I know Bing is using more current data. In other words, they're actually using Microsoft's generative AI for as a for search engine. So Bing is trying to completely replace the interface. Have you used that much?
I've used it some, um, and I've used a couple of the others as well too. Microsoft is using the parent language of ChatGPT. It's using OpenAI GPT as part of
Right.
the in there. So
Yeah.
it's just different LLMs. And see, that's what in my I don't mean this as a commercial, but in the companies I'm in, Donald, we have that healthcare uh, platform that we use actually GPT in. And so we've actually written our own lexicon management systems and our own LLMs to give more healthcare data into it. And we see that the more we can refine our knowledge, the training materials, and actually a lexicon management system, the much better the output is. There's a recent article from out there that OpenAI GPT, again, Chat GPT, but the
Right.
parent,
Right. I know.
in comparing the output to doctors, they uh, the generative AI there was right 92% of the time on diagnosing and applying what should be done, where the average doctor in this study was only accurate about 60% of the time, because they don't have all the knowledge, the resources, and things like that. So, again, I don't think I'm ready for for generative AI to totally do everything, but I would love my doctors to use it as a tool to supplement their knowledge and to supplement their things. And I think that is one of the very best use cases for generative AI is for a tool to make us more productive and to make us uh, expand our knowledge base. To me, generative AI is just another group intelligence tool. So let's see, what we've been on for 50 minutes now. So Donna, why don't you go ahead and let's go ahead and go through some closing remarks.
Well, I just want to say that I'm in violent agreement with you with most of these things. I think that the thing to watch and the thing that's um, like worth, that's to keep always thinking about is I know the medical thing pretty well because my wife's a nurse practitioner, and I get to hear about her adventures, and for many, many, many years, and her friends are doctors. She has friends that are doctors, and they come over, and a huge, huge part of a doctor's job is to um, is psychological. It's getting it's like I have a very, very mild case of COVID right now, which I got from my sister, who's a nutcase anti-vaxxer, and she just doesn't think that she needs to social distance and do these kinds of things. And I rarely, rarely see her, but she managed to give me and another brother both COVID because it's like, what do you do? How do you deal with somebody like that? Like somebody and get them to be able to start taking care of themselves in a way that's best practices from what we know. Um, we can have all the knowledge in the world, but um, people are not open to it, and that's what a lot of the task of being a doctor is being able to somehow convince people to do and not just convince them, but it's all well to tell somebody, oh, you should lose weight, but how, and being and I think that generative AI could help you with that, like maybe, and things that are, but the connection that people need, it has to be there. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how that works, because if we understood how to do it, then doctors would always be able to tell people exactly the right thing that they should do, and they would do it, and everybody would be healthy, and there would be no health problems and everything else like that. And we haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. So it's an amazing tool, and I think even if it doesn't get um, more sophisticated in abduction, just the way it is right now is a lot of fun and fun to play with. So if you've got anybody that's listening to this has not used ChatGTP, which you just Google it, and you can get an account and start playing with it yourself right now. I mean, do it now. Ignore my closing remarks. Go play with ChatGTP. That's the only way to learn things.
It is. Or are one of its competitors as well too. I mean, there's other uh, generative AIs
Right,
out there.
right.
I would search generative AI and then try them because they're each a little bit different. And Donna, I want to remind you, you and I actually share some background in an interesting way. My fiance is a nurse practitioner, and so I hear that is well. And particularly with some of the place, she is currently working in an acute care transitional facility where all of her patients are really critically ill, and usually
Wow.
with complex problems. And as the nurse practitioner at this facility, she's responsible for 10 to 15 patients every day. and she calls in doctors if she thinks she needs them. She orders tests, she orders the meds, and all that stuff. And so it's interesting watching her is when she doesn't quite know everything, where she goes for resources. And we can work that one pretty well across it. And I think, Donald, you also know that I used to be on the innovation steering committees of some of the government agencies in healthcare. And to see how this particularly has an impact in healthcare. It's some of this generative AI type stuff is being added to robotic surgery devices now, for example. And it's going to just make the robotic surgery even better going forward because it's helping the doctors look at options in real time. And that's one of the real interesting things about generative AI is the people in the broadcast saw me typing in those questions and chat GPT bringing back the questions, the answers within 30 seconds or so. And that the account I was using for that is a free account. On the premium accounts, they're plus accounts. The commercial accounts, it's even faster. And it's using larger LLMs than you can on the free ones. Uh, So those are some things, but I echo totally what Donald said is go try them, and you wouldn't know. But I will encourage you to try several. ChatGPT has its own set of biases, has its own set of things. I particularly like some of the image generative AIs. I like some of the music centric generative AI. After I wrote that poem I talked about, Donald, since Austin is the music capital of the United States, uh, I actually went and said, write me a song, and here's my characteristics of what I want in the song. Chat GPT came back with a song for me. And then I went back and said, okay, take the words you just wrote and now put it to music. It did a pretty good job. Now, is it going to go out and get me airplay on streaming networks? Probably not. Uh, but I tell you what, if I took that and went to one of the many music venues in Austin, I bet you I could get up on stage, play that, and people would think it was a good song. And I am not a musician. I don't write music. I do not write words for music, but it actually came out pretty well. I showed it to some of my musician friends because I'm on one of the music boards here in Austin, in the community. And they were going, you wrote this? David, this is damn good. You wrote this? Oh, and you put this music to it? God, I didn't know you could do that, David. And again, I just smiled and didn't let them know that Chat GPT did it for me. But those are the types of things that I find interesting. Was it perfect? No. They did suggest changes to the musical score. A couple of them said, if you change these words here, it would flow better. But that is the human side. Guys on the broadcast, remember I said multiple times here, you can't use it as you get the answers back. You need to take human and go through it. And you need to take the human uh, capability, the wisdom. Generative AI will get you the data, turn that into information, and turn it into knowledge, but it will not give you wisdom. The wisdom that Donald's talked about, the wisdom that I talked about, has to come from our human today. Generative AI is not there yet, but it is a tool that's getting better all the time. Like I said, I've taken the basic knowledges of the commercial versions of GPT. We've supplemented it with our own LLMs, and we've supplemented it with what we call lexicon management. So, Donald, with your wife, you know that in healthcare, the word provider in the United States has over a dozen different meanings, very different ones. So we've added that lexicon management part into our GPT implementation. And with not only the machine learning, but our natural language processing is part of it. And it does so much better job now than stuff I've seen when we combine those two. So it all depends on the extra work you do, the extra work you do as a human, the extra work you do as an organization on the commercial versions of generative AI to adapt it. If the example I used earlier for Bangladesh, if I could now go and load a lot of information into it from the region, the answer we would get back from it would be much more explicit for that area. If I had told it to generate a 10-page report on those 6 questions, we would have had a lot more citations, a lot more stuff like that. So those are some of the things that it can be really good at. But as Donald said, and as I've said earlier, you just need to get out and experiment with it, play with it. I think you will be impressed. The free versions have their limitation, but they're really very good, as you saw earlier. And since Sharif said, David, go ahead and close this up, I'm going to put on my best Sharif imitation right now and say, guys, this is the 900th and I think it's 78th broadcast of this from the World Talent Economic Forum. That is, Sharif said at the top of the program, there's been major advancements, particularly with his work with the Prime Minister of Bangladesh and others that's there. I know there's a lot of interest in this area. Mark Lee on Pod TV says that on their one area, there's about 1,000 people watching this broadcast right now. I know on YouTube and others, there's even more. So those of you who are listening, go and experiment with this. Go talk to others. Talk to your universities. Talk to your government. Uh, get educated on this. In most of these, we say education is a key thing to be successful. Generative AI become educator, but then let generative AI help you become educated about the other things you're doing, and and be proactive with it. I love how generative AI has helped me become more proactive on many different subjects and use it in a very dynamic ways. And so, Donald, unless you have something else to say, I
No,
think
I'm off to the rest of my day. So it's nice seeing you again as usual. Have a wonderful whatever until the next time I see you.
uh,
Bye.
thank you. And everyone listening, bye. Thank you so much. Look forward to you joining us tomorrow. And Mark, thank you so much for the statistics. Thank you all. And until tomorrow, bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, definitely, we still got conversations going on around generative AI. Hopefully, somebody will come on and close out the show. But it is always a fascinating conversation that folks have about this notion of generative AI, and all along those lines, a lot of conversations I heard that the two gentlemen and others were having about the use of things like ChatGPT and other things that people are using on a regular basis. So definitely, I know that that was going on, and like I said, I just popped in to share. I know that you said that you're near 1,000 people, and of course, there are thousands that are watching on. There were 1,000 episodes, and I know there are thousands that are watching through Pod TV and other things. So definitely glad to see you, Sharif. I know that the other gentleman had to leave, but yes, it's an old idea. A lot of people are experimenting with ChatGPT. I did have an author on my show yesterday that was not that pleased because he did a book on Jimmy Buffett, and he said that he saw some garbage books that were put out on Jimmy Buffett because they were just giving you kind of the Cliff Note version, if you know about Cliff Notes in college and everything. So it wasn't really as detailed, and it is much of the kind of work that he would have liked to see. Because a lot of what happens is it repeats back what it has gathered. So some of what it gathered was not as detail oriented or didn't have that human touch that some of the more human connected things do. So that was something that Ryan, I believe was the gentleman's name, was negative about the whole generative AI, because generative AI can give us a lot of conversation, can give us a lot of help in our jobs. It can definitely help you in your writing. I've got some friends that said they have done tremendous amounts of writing because they are able to do it at a faster clip and everything. But I would urge people to sometimes back check and fact check because it doesn't always get the nuances and it doesn't always necessarily have the human touch and the emotional touch that we like in our writing. So you might want to make sure that you are giving the emotional tie to whatever you're trying to write, even if it's scientific or other things as well. So that's just one of the cautionary notes with generative AI is we got to make sure that it is until it develops that qualities, and it probably will develop that qualities because things change during the course of time. But until it gets into nuances and human feelings and all in that space, it could be that we still have to do cross checking. Because as I've told you, Dr. Sharif, one of my other jobs that I have, we're actually down until I think 2024 next year because they've got to go take the test and then they've got to go send the test to us. So we don't usually get those till about January, but they're in the States, in the United States, we have end of the year tests. So like a test that lets you know what the grade school kids are doing. In some cases, the college kids with MCAT and LSAT and stuff like that, so that they can go on to their next level. So it's kind of like testing them on a grade level to see if they're going to the next grade and all of that. So they're end of the year tests, and I've been with measurement for a long time, and we had hundreds of graders, and we still have many graders, but now we sometimes are going against the computer. And part of the reason that us humans are still there is because the computer doesn't always understand nuance. So it may not understand somebody giving a view from, like, say, a urban area or from a rural area, or having some of those emotional ties and all of that. So the computer hasn't quite mastered that yet. So because it hasn't mastered that, us humans need to come in and kind of cross check what the computer is saying. And I think that we'll see more of that. And the other thing that I'll add is that I was on another show not that long ago, and a friend was bringing up the fact that you also are creating jobs through generative AI, because there has to be somebody there that programs it. There has to be somebody there that does the quality check. There has to be people that are doing different things within that. So while there is a fear that generative AI and just kind of AR and VR could be losing jobs, there is also a true belief that it is creating jobs as well. But now we've got to train people in those jobs because not everybody knows coding, but somebody's got to code it as well. So that's something that is something that can go on here in Malaysia, it can go on in Brazil, it can go on in a number of other places. Is we can start training kids in robotics. Because I was talking to my friend Renee Daughtry, and he's into that space, so they can learn coding and they can learn how to actually make the generative AI work, and also make sure that it is being inclusive, that it is not being biased toward one group or another. So those are some of the quality control things that we still have to work on and get done. So that's just some of my immediate thoughts and all along those lines. But I did enjoy the conversation with the other folks. I'm just now popping in with you, but definitely I know you're wrapping up and all in that space, but definitely it was a great conversation that they had. And I can't wait to hear what you've got going on tomorrow, because we still got Friday to get through, today being Thursday, and then we'll see what other conversations are happening, because you always have amazing conversations. And like I said, I think you're near your 1,000 episodes. So by this time in what this is September, by about the middle of October, you would have reached 1,000 episodes. So that is a good thing. And then we'll start going for 2,000 episodes. I did see that you had a couple of hundred subscribers. So now we need to get you up to like 1,000 or 2,000 subscribers. So folks, if you are watching this show right now, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the World Talent Economy Forum YouTube, so that you can get this great quality content. Because I know that Dr. Sharif would like to see more subscribers. I think when I looked last, you were like at 600 and something, but I think that we can get you up to 1,000 by the time you get to your 1,000th episode. So if folks are watching and they're enjoying this great content, please hit the subscribe button so that Dr. Sharif can get better numbers, because the more numbers you get, then there is the possibility of compensation and getting some rewards from YouTube and all of that. So definitely, as I say on a lot of the shows that exist, World Economy Talent Forum, World Talent Economy Forum definitely has a YouTube channel. And whether you're in North Carolina, where I am at, whether you're in Malaysia, whether you're in China, or whether you are in Nigeria or a number of other parts of the world, this is great quality content. You're hearing from experts from around the world. So I would urge people to listen and to subscribe and to hit the subscription button, so that by the time that Dr. Sharif gets to the 1,000th episode, he will have 1,000 subscribers as well. So Dr. Sharif, we're going to try to get you to 1,000 subscribers in addition to the 1,000th episode. So I think that folks need to hit the subscribe button so you can get that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Markley.
No
We need
problem.
all of your support for World Talent Economic Forum. Thank you. Bye bye, and take care.
Take it easy.